Good evening, good evening, good evening. Tonight, we are going to discuss the Heritage Foundation and its multiple mandates. Now, the Heritage Foundation, also known as either just Heritage or the Foundation, was founded February 16th, 1973 by Paul Weyrich, Edwin Fuellner, and Joseph Coors. Edwin took a leading role in the conservative movement the Heritage Foundation took a leading role in the conservative movement during the Reagan administration. It is an activist conservative think tank. It is based in DC and has a significant influence within the United States public policy making. It has been ranked as one of the most influential public policy organizations within the United States. Its sister organization is the Heritage Action, which was created in 2010. It grew out of the new business activist movement inspired by the Powell Memorandum. And this derived due to discontent with Nixon embracing what they labeled as liberal consensus. The cautious nature of other think tanks also contributed to its creation. Fuellner and Weyrich wanted to create their version of the Brookings Institution in order to advance conservative activism. Their primary funding within the early years was from Coors. Yeah, Coors. Weyrich was the foundation's first president. Frank D. Walton was the successor of Weyrich, began the use of direct mail fundraising, which increased its annual income to $1 million per year as of 1976. By 1981, its annual budget became $5.3 million. As far as its advocacy, it is pro-business policies, anti-communism, and neoconservatism. It has distinguished itself from the American Enterprise Institute, AEI, by advocating for the Christian right. And I know some people are confused about exactly what the Christian right is. It is the religious right. Christian political factions that are characterized by their strong support of socially conservative and traditionalist policies. It seeks to influence politics and public policies with their interpretation of Christian teachings. Through the 1970s, the foundation was small compared to AEI and Brookings. By January 1981, it had published the Mandate for Leadership, which was a comprehensive report that aimed to reduce the size of the government. It also gave guidance to the Reagan administration. It included more than 2,000 specific suggestions to move the federal government in a more conservative direction. It was well received by the White House, the Reagan White House. Many of its authors took positions within the Reagan administrations, and a copy was given to every cabinet member. Approximately 60% of the suggestions were either initiated or implemented within Reagan's first year of office. Reagan credited the foundation for, and I quote, the success of his presidency. It was influential with developing and advancing the Reagan Doctrine. It supported the development of a new ballistic missile defense system within the United States. In 1990 and 1991, it was the leading proponent of Operation Desert Storm. Per Frank Starr, a Washington bureau chief with the Baltimore Sun, the foundation studies, and I quote, laid much of the groundwork for the Bush administration thinking regarding the post-Soviet foreign policy. 6 out of 10 of the budget reform proposals of the mandate were included in the 1990 budget proposal. The foundation opposed the Clinton healthcare plan of 1993. In 1994, they advised Newt Gingrich and others regarding the development of the Contract with America, which is credited with gaining a GOP congressional majority in 1994. Many of the ideas were at the core of the Clinton administration. Also in 1994, they began engaging in culture wars. And that was through the publication of the Index of Leading Cultural Indicators by William Bennett. This was said to document how drug use, crime, teen suicide, illegitimacy, divorce, and 14 social indicators worsened since the 1960s. In 1995, Clinton aligned with some of the suggested welfare reforms of the foundation. This was included in the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act. 1995, the first Index of Economic Freedom was published. It is now published annually, and it assesses the economic freedom within countries. In 1997, the Wall Street Journal became the co-author of the index as well as its co-manager. After 9/11, it supported the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2004, an international security study contended that the foundation confused public debate because it challenged opposition to the Iraq war with their own experts that would undermine international experts and scholars. And International Security is a journal that was founded in 1976. It is a peer-reviewed academic journal in the field of international and national security, and is published 4 times a year. The foundation also defended the Bush administration's treatment of suspected terrorists at Guantanamo Bay. In April of 2005, it was criticized by the Washington Post for a softened criticism of Malaysia. The shift occurred after Edwin Fuller, the foundation president, and Mahathir Mohamad, the then Malaysian prime minister, formed a business relationship. In 2010, ACA, or more commonly known as Obamacare, was an ideal that was initially developed and supported through the Assuring Affordable Health Care for All Americans. That was a study that was released October 1st, 1989. But as far as ACA and Obamacare, the foundation opposed it firmly. July 2011, the foundation released a study on poverty in the United States. This study was criticized for its narrow definition of poverty. Its conclusions were heavily criticized by the Washington Post, The Nation, which is a progressive biweekly magazine, Center for American Progress, and The New Republic, which is also a magazine. December 2012, Jim DeMint, Senator of South Carolina, resigned his position within the Senate to head the foundation. Under DeMint, there was a change in the process of publishing policy papers, and many of them were either shelved or heavily edited from that point out. This new practice caused many of the scholars within the foundation at the time to quit. May 10th, 2013, Jason Richwine co-authored the foundation's controversial report on the cost of amnesty. Richwine did subsequently resign after attention was shown on his 2009 Harvard thesis and his 2008 comments at an AEI forum. He argued that Black and Hispanic people were intellectually inferior and cannot assimilate due to being predisposed to low IQs. Of course, there had to be racism. He also contended that this information should be considered when drafting public policy. Once again, let's use pseudoscience and create law off of it. Now, the foundation regarding Trump. The first year of his candidacy, the foundation mocked the Trump candidacy, but once he became the president of the United States, the foundation did gain major influence within his transition team and his administration. It was the most powerful staffing that they have had to date with presidential administration. Approximately 66 alumni and employees of the foundation gained positions within the Trump administration. In 2021, the foundation hired Chad Wolf, Ken Cuccinelli, and Mark Morgan, and they were from the Trump administration, and they had previously worked in regards to immigration. From 2021 to 2022, Mike Pence was hired as a distinguished visiting fellow. In 2023, they established a cooperative relationship with the Danube Institute, which is state funded out of Hungary. Now let's get into the mandates. The first one, Mandate for Leadership. It was a series of books published with the Heritage Foundation. The intention was the reduction of the scope and size of the federal government through specific policy recommendations. It's traditionally released coinciding with the incoming presidential administrations. In 1979, the foundation trustees at a meeting decided to create a plan of action for the presidential administration of 1981. This was also suggested by Jack Eckert, a former General Services administrative head for the Ford administration. Robert Kribel proposed the production of a manual to help policymakers decrease the size of the government. The Heritage study was headed by Charles Heatherly, who was a former field director for the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. Now, the Intercollegiate Studies Institute, the ISI, was founded in 1953 by Frank Chodorow and William F. Buckley Jr. It is a nonprofit educational organization that promotes conservative thought on college campuses. It sponsors debates and lectures on college campuses. It publishes journals and books and provides funding and editorial assistance to college newspapers, and it finances graduate fellowships. In January 1980, Heatherly delivered a 5-page outline entitled Mandate for Leadership. Per Heatherly, the purpose was to, and I quote, revitalize our economy, strengthen our national security, and halt the centralization of power in the federal government. The Heritage Foundation contacted both campaigns, Carter and Reagan. Only the Reagan administration responded. July 1980, Edwin Meese, Reagan's aide, was an unexpected guest at a Heritage dinner. I think only the other guest found that unexpected. Mandate 1, January 1981, 3,000 pages, 20 volumes was published. It contained 2,000 plus individual suggestions to move the government in a more conservative direction. It focused on administration and management. And I quote, presented an explicit plan for reshaping public discourse on civil rights issues. Wait for it. The mandate recommended that the DOJ, and I quote, halt its affirmative action policies to remedy past discrimination against women and other minorities. Other recommendations within this first mandate was that for the 1981 fiscal year, the defense budget should increase by $20 million, which would give it an average increase of $35 billion over 5 years. It was recommended to establish urban enterprise zones to encourage businesses to move into intercities. It also recommended personal income tax be reduced by 10% across the board. It also was recommended that there be a presidential line item veto power, the development of a new strategic bomber using B-1 and advanced bomber technology. The key contributors were hired into the Reagan administration. They were William Bennett and James G. Watt. Approximately 60% of the proposals were initiated or implemented into the government by the end of Reagan's first year. The first mandate did make it onto the Washington Post bestseller list. The New York Times later called the first mandate, and I quote, the manifesto of the Reagan Revolution. Mandates 2 and 3. 1984, Mandate for Leadership 2, Continuing the Conservative Revolution, was published. There were 150 contributors to this mandate, and it contained 1,300 recommendations. Mandate for Leadership 3, Policy Strategies for the 1990s, was published for the 1988 administration and was edited by Bert Pines and Charles Heatherly. Mandate 4, came just before the 1996 presidential election, and meant that's when it was published. It focused on political strategy for Congress to continue the conservative policies of the outgoing Republican presidential administration. It was offered as study material at an orientation for all freshman Congress people. Um, and that orientation was put together by Empower America and the Heritage Foundation. Now, out of Mandate 4, the chapter that was focused on moving an agenda through Congress was recommended to then Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich by then Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott. Mandate 5. Mandate for Leadership 2000. It included edited transcripts of It included edited transcripts of 9 of the nonpartisan public sessions held by the foundation in 2000. And those sessions were called the Keys to a Successful Presidency. It focused on the previous administrations of all those years gone past, their ability to implement the foundation's policy agendas on day one of the administration. Key participants in these sessions were Leon Panetta, Clinton's chief of staff, Martin Anderson, a Reagan advisor, Zbigniew, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Brzezinski, which was an advisor to Carter, and Robert Novak, a columnist. The program director was Alan S. Felsenberg, a former congressional aide and a historian. Mandate 6, published in 2005, was only 156 pages long. It was shorter due to the amount of proposals that had become policy or a part of mainstream debate. Mandate 7, in November 2016, it was published. It would contain 3 volumes. This was due in part to the progress that had been lost during the Obama presidency. There was no Mandate 8, but Mandate 9 was the latest one, and that was published April of this year. It's called The Mandate of Leadership 2025, The Conservative Promise. It is the earliest publication before a presidential election, and it was edited by Paul Dans and Steve Groves. It is 900 plus pages with 30 chapters. It provides the policy agenda for what everybody is freaking out about right now, Project 2025. Now, tomorrow, we're not going to dive right into Project 2025. We're going to discuss a little bit some of the notable people that I brought up tonight, and then we'll get into Project 2025, because when you understand who's controlling the strings, you have a better idea of what kind of puppet you're actually dealing with. But on that note, I hope you enjoyed this series, and this is giving you a good starting point for your own research regarding the mandates and the Heritage Foundation. As always, each one teach one, each one reach one. I will see you tomorrow.